intrigued because I had another peculiar connection with the Reverend Dixon. I was out at the Plato Cemetery, and lo and behold, right next to the Willett family mausoleum was a Celtic cross. And I went to look at it, and it was a memorial to the former rector of Epiphany, and he was born on April 15, 1840. Interesting. 100 years to the day before me. And I was hoping he had a long life. And so, with some trepidation, I read the second line. And turns out at this point I've lived about 3 years longer than he did. And that window, I think that's the window, one of these two windows, I'm probably has a connection with him because I think Reverend Dixon married a daughter from the parish. And Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure the story would be interesting if I were corrected. We have some pretty fascinating stories here in the readings today. The lectionary is taking some great stories from the Old Testament and talking about them. The story of Sarah, Isaac, Hagar, and Ishmael is as fascinating as any. We don't often realize it as Christians, but somehow we got left out of this story. And we had to do a little bit of weaseling to get back in. Because this is the story of the Jews and the story of the Arabs. And how do us people who are non-Semitic get fitted in? Well, that takes a lot of history and stories and a whole new section of the Bible. There was amongst the various Semitic tribes a strong connection. You know, Arabs speak Arabic and Jews speak Hebrew, and those are sister languages. And we speak an Indo-European language, which is of an entirely different language family. And the gospel mentions that the one's foes will be members of one's own household. And this, of course, is an observation of Jesus about how differing values and connections can make for some of the most bitter of disputes. And the bitter disputes between the various Semitic families endures to our own day. When you see what's happening in Israel between the Jewish people and the Palestinians, but as well, various other Semitic tribes who are even now, as we speak, caught in great battles in the ancient nation of Iraq. Incidentally, if you haven't followed that history too closely, the Kurds are kind of a separate group, and they variously don't like either of the Arabic groups which are to the south of them. The story of the gospel is the story of Jesus telling his disciples what they need to do as they go out to spread the gospel over the whole earth. And I don't think this is the 12. The 12 were called to a different sort of ministry, a different sort of standard than us simple, getting simpler as we get older parish priests, and the Christian people in general. There are those of us who live And there are also people who are called occasionally to lead very heroic lives. We can all pray that we're not called to the latter, but that if we are called to the latter, we would have the strength to face the rigor, the danger, and the adventures to which we might find ourselves called. Jesus reminds the disciples that they are called to live for others, even as Hagar. The commonality here is both lessons talk about a slave and a master, and Sarah and her son were allegedly the master people, and Hagar and her son Ishmael were slaves until Abraham freed them when he sent them away. Incidentally, Hagar was about, you kind of picture a baby who was going to the wilderness with her mother who had just bore a child, or that was always kind of the picture I have in the back of my mind. But actually, Ishmael was 14 years old, young, a male, and aware that he was probably in competition with his brother Isaac, who was not particularly an outstanding person if we follow what goes on. There's not much said about Isaac at all. Abraham thinks he's called to sacrifice him on a mountain, and Abraham and Sarah get him a wife from another country. But what kind of life did Isaac live? Well, not nearly so interesting as his sons or his father. So Isaac is sort of a great unknown. And probably most of us can kind of relate to being an unknown, even if not so great. And the gospel echoes with the reverberations of the stories from the Old Testament as Jesus goes through this. Jesus tells the 12 disciples, live as a slave to others. And he reminds them that if life was very, very rough for Jesus, that he would be crucified, he would be accused of being a son of the devil, that the disciples would face even equal and greater difficulties as they went through his life. And then after that grim announcement, well, you're called. Guess what? You ain't gonna like it. After that, Jesus very beautifully and in really a very literary manner reminds them that what they're called for is indeed hazardous, dangerous, and it may cost them their life, but they will be doing the work and the will of God. Are you not worth more than a sparrow? But God keeps track of even the very sparrow that falls to the ground. And then Jesus also reminds them that they are called, and he must have Peter reminded of this. Peter, remember, had denied Jesus 3 times on the night that he was betrayed by Judas. And Jesus was amongst the first to see the resurrected Christ. And Peter, of course, is immediately restored to the fellowship if he was ever disassociated, which I don't think he was. Jesus calls them to always acknowledge him. We are called to speak up occasionally and remind people what the good is. Now, we don't have to be snotty about it. We don't have to be self-righteous about it. And we don't have to do it. Well, we need to learn how to be winsome. We need to learn how to commend the good that is within us at ourselves. Uh, Note the hypocrisies that we've committed again, and if we are seen as that kind of person who is mostly concerned in citing and reminding ourselves what we need to do, our very occasional suggestions to others will probably be received ever so much better. And then Jesus reminded the disciples again that when he came into the world proclaiming peace, uh, proclaiming goodness, proclaiming treating all people, including the least of these, my brothers and sisters, as though you were receiving Christ himself, that will not always be a popular message. You will not always be commended for your wisdom and kindness when you insist that other people be treated with wisdom and by kindness as you go into the world. And then finally, Jesus reminded them that those who find their life, those who live so as to live their own life only, will lose their life. Those who live